Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Sims, and welcome to this webinar on party building, brought to you by the Communist Party's Membership and Organizing Collective. We have with us this evening Bernard Sampson, who is one of the leaders of the party nationally, a member of the National Committee, and one of the leaders of our Houston Club. We're going to wait 1 or 2 minutes for everybody to log on and call in, and then we'll be getting started. So bear with us just for a moment, and we will get started. Okay, good evening, everyone, again. My name is Joe Sims, and I work with the Communist Party's Membership and Organizing Collective, and we are a month into our National Party Building campaign that is going from May Day until Labor Day. And during that time, we're trying to increase the strength of the parties, increase the size of our membership in the first place, but and also increase the circulation of our press of peoplesworld.org, increase our financial capability, and increase and develop our relationships with organizations and individuals. Tonight, we have a special presentation that is going to be presented by Bernard Sampson. Bernard is a leader of the party in Houston, and it will grapple with the issue of the do's and don'ts of party building, with a particular emphasis on recruiting and retention, and consolidating clubs. The party in Houston has some very rich experiences in that regard, and Bernard is going to share them with us. So without further ado, let me turn the floor over to Bernard, and it's all yours, Bernard. Looking forward to your presentation. Thanks.
Thanks for the introduction, Joe, and welcome everyone. I'm going to talk about 3 different areas. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Houston Club itself, a little bit of the history and the makeup of the Houston Club, and then I'll be talking about the do's and the don'ts in recruiting, and then I'm going to talk about club life and how to build a club and what's important in a club, what to do and what not to do. So let me start off first with the Houston Club. The Communist Party was first built in Texas in early 1920s. Our earliest recording would be around 1924, because we knew that during the drives for the newspaper, money came in from Texas. But the party itself did not become public until the 30s, especially right before and right after the New Deal is when the party began to really grow, run candidates, etc. The headquarters was always Houston, Texas, and it used to be downtown until 1950 when the police raided it and shut it down and arrested all the members and ran everyone out of town. Today, our club has around 220 to 230 members here in the Houston area. But for many years, the club was around 20 members. And we would gain a member once a year and lose a member once a year. And we weren't really connected very strongly to the trade union movements, et cetera. Though we did do a lot of political work, and we ran the Jesse Jackson campaign in Houston in 1988. In fact, the YCL organized Jesse Jackson's first public demonstration at U of H. And we had, I think, close to 10,000 people showed up. So we played a major role in that particular campaign. Later on, the FBI and other organizations of the state stepped in, and people began to lose their jobs. I was shot at. I had about 31 rounds fired at me, and I received death threats, and I had to carry a gun to work and, look for a bomb under my car. And other comrades lost their jobs or were forced to move. And the party sort of went underground for a while, and then it reemerged. And again, with around 20 members, and under new leadership, though, sort of dogmatic and very dogmatic and undemocratic leadership. And that's lasted for a while until we contacted the National and asked for their help in building a new club. And Juan and John Bachtel came down, and they met with every individual member. We formed a new club, and anyone that wanted to join that club could. And I think we started off with around 16 members. About 7 went over, refused to rejoin. And by the way, they're still around, but they do absolutely no work. Absolutely zero. We don't see them anywhere and haven't for years. They haven't recruited a single member. Our club went from around 16 members to where we are today, around probably close to 230. Now, our goal during this recruitment drive is 33 members here in Houston, and we're a little bit behind. We just recruited a former member the other night, so we have 6 new members. Now, our club does concentration. We don't just go after everyone. We go particularly after people of color and women, because we know that that's what gives us real diversity and strengthens our party. And that's the big difference between our club and, say, DSA or Socialist Alternative or PSL or ISO or Workers' World. Those parties are 99% white and 80% male. Our last meeting, which was sort of small, because it was Memorial Day, we still had 25 people show up. Only 6 people were what you would say are white. And that gives you an idea of the composition of our club. To give you an idea of how our concentration works, the last 6 members that we recruited, 4 were female and 2 were males. One was a paid full-time organizer in the civil rights organization called Texas Organizing Project. 2 are union members, one the Fight for 15, fast food worker, and the other is a teacher in the teachers union. And then we recruited 2 civil rights workers, and then we have one other person we recruited, and that person joined online. We don't know what he does yet. He just joined, and we'll be contacting him, and we'll be talking about the difference between recruiting people face-to-face and recruiting people that join online and how that works. So our party here in Houston has a large headquarters. We can seat well over 100 people if we need to. Our club meets once a month, always the last Sunday of the month at 11 o'clock. No matter when we meet, there's always people that can't come. We have some people that are workers that work a shift that can't come. We have other people that go to church and can't come. So we've looked at other dates and stuff, but no matter what we pick, there's always people that can't make it. So we do it this way, and we send information on the meetings, the minutes and stuff to the membership. We also have a Young Communist League with about 32 members. It's not going to be very active this summer, unfortunately, but we are going to be expanding to a second university, we hope, next fall. Our party ran 4 candidates in the last elections. One who lost, she ran for U.S. Senate against Beto, got 250,000 votes. That's the largest vote I believe a communist has ever gotten in Texas. And the Beto campaign actually had to come to Houston to meet with her to try to curry her favor. Another candidate who's running for County Commissioner Precinct 4, which is a very important position. It covers over 1 million people and over $1 billion a year. That person would decide who that money goes to, the poor, the rich, etc. But our candidate, Penny Shaw, won with 75% of the vote and 11 endorsements. And we have a political outreach committee that's going to be working in the elections, concentrating on her elections against a Republican incumbent. We have special events with the trade union movement. We do a movie night at the FLCIO headquarters, and we're doing a monthly ongoing event at the Teachers Union Hall. Our last movie night, we did a Soviet film made right after the war called The Fall of Berlin, because it was the month in which Nazi Germany was defeated. And we had 25 people that showed up. Most of them are not party members, and people bring beer and drinks and stuff, and we do recruit from that. We also have the oldest socialist reading group in Texas. We started it during the Jesse Jackson campaign in 1988. It meets every 2 months, and we'll be doing a class this Tuesday on Marxism, and we just did a class on the LBGTI community. We also have 2 meetups, which are on the computer. One is the Bernie Sanders group. Now, we were the first in the country to set up a website for Bernie Sanders in November of 2014. We have over 1,000 members on that, and we use that to invite people to events, and people are still joining. And then the other one, of course, is the Socialist Reading Group. Now, we run 3 Facebook pages. We do a YCL Facebook page. We have the Communist Party of Houston, and we also have a civil rights page called the Martin Luther King March that deals almost specifically with racism, immigration, etc., those particular issues. And I may have invited some of y'all to like those pages, but we use those pages to organize, to tell people about meetings, etc. We also operate some other pages as well, like for the Texas page, etc. But we're just talking about the Houston Club here right now. We also head up the Poor People's Campaign here in Houston. We just had a meeting today at the True Love Missionary Baptist Church, and the pastor signed on to it. He's a friend of one of our comrades, Reverend Caldwell, James Caldwell. And we're going to Austin tomorrow. Some of us are going to Seema's going to get arrested, maybe a couple of other comrades. So we have a very diverse club, and we're trying to increase the amount of women in the club. And of course, we have an exec. It has 13 members. We have a rather large exec because we have a lot of members, but also people can't always make the exec meetings. So we always like to have at least 10. So we always usually have that number. And it meets once a month in between the meetings. We produce our own buttons. We have a button machine. We produce our own leaflets. These are 3 of the leaflets here. This is one done by the YCL. It's just a simple 4-page leaflet. This is another one that we produce. The YCL did this one. This is How to Be a Good Communist by Nelson Mandela. A lot of people don't know about this, but it's a great, great article that he wrote. And it's about, 22 pages long. Nelson Mandela, How to Be a Good Communist. One of our heroines in Texas is Emma Taniuka, and she led a major strike in 1937, I believe it was, at the age of 21. She led 13,000 Mexican-American pecan workers on strike. And she was eventually run out of the city, and she came to Houston, and she became the chairperson for the Communist Party for a brief period for Texas. And this is an article she wrote in 1939 in the theoretical journal of our party called The Communist. And it was the first Marxist analysis of the Mexican question in the Southwest. And this is a pamphlet we produced on a laser printer, and we have machinery and stuff and everything. It's a 20-page. And it has information on joining the party, and etc. So I just wanted to show you some of the stuff we do and some of the stuff we print. We're going to be printing more of these leaflets. We do it all in-house. So we also have in our headquarters, we have a child care facility. It's sort of pinned in. I've put photographs of it up, and it has little couches and Lego tables and coloring books and a carpet, and the kids love it. They stay in it, and the parents are able to both come instead of usually the man saying, I'm going to go to the meeting, leaving the female at home. So we're the first group in Houston, union-wise or left-wise, to do anything like this. And so we've gotten a good response, and I think people like that. We also have an adult section that has a pool table, chess sets, a little library, and comrades will stay after the club meeting sometimes and play some pool, or sometimes come by in the evening and use it socially. The party has been suppressed in Houston at least twice. In 1950, during the whole period of the McCarthy era, and during that time, basically the National Party asked Texas comrades to actually leave the state because it was so dangerous. But many of them stayed, like John Stanford and other heroes of the party. So that's pretty much about our club right now. You know, we have a goal of recruiting union members and civil rights workers. And as far as white males, they join on their own. We don't have to do any extra work. And when we go to places, I'm going to go into that, demonstrations and mass meetings, how we recruit, who we target, et cetera, and how we do it. So I'm going to move on next to the do's and the don'ts of recruiting. So the first thing, if you're going to recruit, you have to have the right materials. So I made a list. You have to have a sign-up sheet. And we have a sign-up sheet that looks like this. And it asks basically your name, your area code, your email. And we have it in English and Spanish. And then you have to have a sign-up sheet when you actually recruit someone. And this is our recruitment sheet. And we have it in Spanish and in English. It has your name, nationality, occupation, list any unions you belong to, community groups, what political issues do you feel most strongly about. Please explain any experience that you have with political campaigns, community work, or union organizing, and why did you want to join the Communist Party? So luckily, that's something we use quite a bit, but not enough. So you have to have these materials. You also have to have a table so you can set up at different events. You have to have a couple of chairs. You really have to buy these things. You have to have party cards. You need to have cards for when people sign up. You need to have a banner. Every club should have a banner of some sort. It's best if it has a union label on it, and everything you do should have a union label unless you do it in-house, of course, and you should have labor donated on it. We should have leaflets. We make our own leaflets, but we also have others. We have some from Rick Nagin. We have John Bachtel's latest one, and we have other ones that we print or use. And you can get leaflets from the PW. You know, print those up and make 15, 20 copies, have some literature on your table. The other thing is to order books. We have a bookstore. We have hundreds of books in Spanish and in English, and we get them mostly from international publishers. So we make orders, and of course they do, I think it's a 40% discount. So you can make money off of it, and it's more impressive for people to see that. Like the last demonstration we went to, DSA had a table, and they had like 4 pamphlets. It didn't look very good. You know, we had tons of books and leaflets, and it just looked much more interesting. It showed more of a history and you know, more content than other groups. Another thing we have is a button machine, and it's not a bad idea for clubs to have this. That way you can make buttons for different organizations. We're going to do some for Penny Shaw for her election campaign. We're going to do some for the People's Campaign. We're going to do other ones that we can sell and make money on. And so you make money on all of this, and it's a great way to raise money for the party. Okay, the other thing, of course, every club has to have a Facebook. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail, because every club, there should be 2. There should be a district Facebook and there should be a club Facebook, and that should be the very first thing that a club does. Even if you only have one person in an area, they should set up a Facebook. And we're going to go into some of the do's and don'ts on Facebooks. The last thing that you really need to have is a camera so that you can record the events and put it on Facebook or send it into the people's world. So always carry that with you. In fact, in your car, you should always carry the sign-up sheets, the mailing sheets, and some literature, some brochures, the party program, things like that. And those should always be with you in the car because you never know where you're going to meet people, where you might recruit. And if you don't have it with you, they'll change their mind when you call them later. You have to strike while the iron is hot, as they say. So let's talk about you're at a demonstration. Let's say you go to a demonstration. We all go to demonstrations. Carrying the banner, you would think, well, you know, what's the big deal about carrying the banner? Well, you want to have the banner on sticks so it stands up high. If you don't, you want to make sure that your people march at least 10 feet behind the next group. If you don't, no one's going to see your banner, and you might as well have not even taken it. You need to talk to the people that are carrying the banner that they need to walk at the same pace. And you need to hold it high, and you need to hold it where people can see it. You also, of course, need to set up a table. And here's the thing about a table. You don't sit behind the table. I know I said you have to have 2 chairs, but the table is really, you should not be behind the table. You need to be in the crowd. You should have a clipboard with the sign-up sheet and the application. And you should talk to people and say, you know, I'm from the Communist Party, and we're in a recruitment drive, and, you know, we're trying to get people in, and you would make a great candidate in the Communist Party. You should assume the sale. You should never ask, never, don't ask, do you want to join the party? Don't ever do that, because they'll usually say I have to think about it, or they'll say no. Very rarely will they say yes. You have to assume what we call the sale. You're selling the party. You're selling a product, you know. And so what you have to tell people, you have to assume they're going to join. Why wouldn't they join? This is the Communist Party. And if you have that attitude, it's infectious, and they feel it even if it's subconscious. And what you do is you take the clipboard and you say, here, and you hand it to them while you say you should be in the Communist Party. And you put it in their hand. They will grab it. You don't ask, do you want the clipboard? You never ask if they want anything. You assume they want it. You hand them the clipboard, then you take the pen and you put it in their hand, and then you take their hand and you point to where they need to start filling it out and say, please, fill out right here. And 90% of the time, if you can get that far, they will fill it out. That's just the science of selling. And when I talk about selling, I sold Harley Davidsons for 20 years. And we had to know the history of the Harley. We had to know what was the difference between the Harley and the Suzuki or the Indian or the Honda. Why was the Harley better? We had to make it a value. We had to say if you bought the Harley, the enjoyment, the reliability you got out of it was worth much more than what you put into it, money-wise or payment-wise. Well, the party's no different. Nobody wants to join an organization that's boring, that's not going anywhere, where you have to study all the time and you have to go to one meeting a week and there's never any growth and there's no history to it, and it just is a split off from another split off from another split off. Nobody really wants that, but most people don't know any of that. But you do know that, and you're trying to save them from going down that hole and eventually leaving the left in sectarian politics and turning against it, perhaps. So you have to know how to sell the product. You have to know the history of the party, and it's really important wherever you are to know the history of the local party. And you can look it up. It's not that hard to look it up. And almost anywhere you are, there's going to be some history of the party in your area, or at least in your state. And I guarantee you there is. For instance, if you're in Oregon or Seattle, you had communist congressmen that were elected, I think, right after the war to Congress. Most people don't know that. But they weren't public communists. They ran as Democrats, but they were Communist Party members that were elected to office as Congress. And so that's a great thing to tell people and to let them know the history of the organizing. I mean, if there's any CIO unions, it was communists that probably organized them in your state, and you can look up that history and you can find it. It may take a little work, but it's well worth it. It builds pride in the party. It gives you a continuation going back 100 years to when the party was formed. And so it's very, very important when you sell the party to people. Well, we're not like DSA that was formed in 1984. We're not like Socialist Alternative whenever it was formed, probably 15 years ago, or some of these other groups. We've been here for almost 100 years. So there's a reason why we're still here, even though the party has been suppressed, has come under vicious attack. I mean, here in Texas, we can't even run as communists because it's against the law. Why us? It doesn't affect DSA or other groups. Well, maybe the capitalists know something about us that no one else seems to know, and we should take that as a compliment that they fear us, even though right now we're not big enough for them to really fear. So that's really the attitude you should take. Now, the other thing is you need to build a personal relationship with the people that you recruit, or the people you're going to recruit. So let's say you go to a union meeting and you're there to support the union because you're not necessarily a union member, and you go to the picket lines, etc. The first thing is to be consistent and to always show up. And when the union leader calls you saying, we need you, you say you're there, and at a certain point they're going to say, oh yeah, of course, because you're always, we can count on you, you're reliable. And you go to lunch with people and you build a relationship, and that's how you recruit. And it takes a while, and it takes consistency, but you have to start with one person at a time. You can go to lunch with them, go to the movies, whatever it may be. You always want to listen to the person that you're trying to recruit. You know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so 2/3 of the time we should be listening to what people are saying, why they maybe aren't ready to join the party. In sales, we call this objections. Why aren't you buying this Harley? Well, I'm not buying this Harley. They usually don't tell you the truth. It may be their wife says no. It may be they have bad credit or something like this. But it's only when you listen to them and find out what their objections are, can you overcome their objections and bring them into the party. So you also don't want to lecture too much about the party. You don't want to talk too much. You want to let them do most of the talking.
Bernard?
Yes.
We've been going for about a half hour. We stop for a moment and take some questions.
Okay. Actually, I just have yeah, no, that's fine. Let's do that. Sure. Let's stop for a moment.
Okay. Let's give Bernard an opportunity to catch his breath. A lot of new and startling ideas were put on the table. Does anybody have a question about anything that Bernard has put on the table so far? And if he would like to ask a question, you can do so by clicking on the hand icon on your screen. Click on it, and we will unmute you so that you can ask a question. Anybody with a question? I see a lot of people. If you want to ask a question, okay, let's see. Laura Dooley has a question. I'm going to unmute you, Laura. You have the floor, Laura. First question of the evening.
Yeah, I'm from Michigan, and your presentation is fantastic. Quick question, what opportunities do you have for tabling? And do you actually give total strangers the clipboard and said, you need to join the party?
Good question. Well, we table at every event we can. Some are indoor events, and some are outdoor events like May Day or certain demonstrations. Of course, there's some demonstrations we don't table at because we don't want to look like we're muscling in on somebody else's thing. You have to make that decision. But table wherever you can, and never take a dominant space unless you're doing the demonstration or you're one of the leaders in the demonstration. The other part of the question was, strangers. Well, yes, but here's how it works. we don't do tabling. We've done it in the past where we've just set up on the street, and yes, we recruit a lot of people, but it's sort of like people join in on the internet. We never see them. Uh, there's different consciousness. There's people that work all day, go home, drink a beer, and never go to anything political, don't even vote. Those people we're not looking at recruiting. There's that consciousness, which is none, and then you have class consciousness, and that's people that are involved in the trade union movement or involved in the civil rights movement. It's a little bit higher consciousness, and we recruit them to bring about socialist consciousness. So at demonstrations, etc., yes, but we usually go to women, people of color, and young people. And we generally pass up on people that are older because most of those people are not, if they haven't joined the party, they're not going to. We don't turn them down, but we don't target them, and we never get in long discussions or arguments because we're wasting time. You're only at an event for so long, and you want to concentrate on the more likely people you really want in the club that haven't been imbued with decades of anti-communist hysteria.
Okay. My questions and then continue. The next question will be from Vaughn. Vaughn, I'm going to unmute you, and you have the floor now. Just 1 second, Vaughn.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Bernard, I'm enjoying your presentation, and I certainly understand why you would want to target people in the civil rights struggle, and workers who may be working within unions or trying to create a union. But it strikes me as a sad note in the history of the Communist Party that the fractionalism that started between Stalin and Trotsky still carries on. Stalin is gone, and I think in retrospect the history of the success of the Communist Party in Russia owes much to the work of Trotsky. My point is this: to what extent are you trying to reach out not only to potential Marxist socialists, but to actual socialists, Marxist socialists, who may be in a different faction, who may consider themselves to be members of the Socialist Workers' Party, and others who may wish to reach out back in your direction to help unify not only the party, but all Marxist socialists, all Marxist Leninists. This factionalism works against our unity and our success. To what extent do you think that's a feasible objective?
Thanks, Vaughn. Go ahead, Bernard.
Okay, it's a good question. It's a good question. We do work with some left organizations. We allow here in Houston joint membership. So I'm a member of DSA and I'm a member of the Democratic Party. In fact, I'm a precinct chair of the Democratic Party and I'm a delegate at their convention. However, on the far left, to the people to the left of us, a few months ago, we recruited someone from Socialist Alternative. We have 2 people from Socialist Alternative here in Houston that come to our club meetings and come to our movie nights, and we're planning to recruit both of them. Socialist Workers Party left Houston several years ago. They moved everybody out. They were working in the steel industry only. They never recruited a single person after about 10 years, not one. And some of the groups like the Revolutionary Communist Party and some of them, they're so far out that it's crazy to work with them. But people that are reasonable, that run it, first they have to have orientation toward trade unions. They have to be involved in electoral campaigns of some sort. And we reach out to them and we try to work with other left groups. And I think we have good relations with most of them. But it's not our main orientation, but we always invite them to things. And, as far as the Trotsky-Stalin thing, up until 26, every Soviet book that came out talked about Trotsky being wonderful and great. And after 27, he was horrible and bad. So I don't, we try not to get in those discussions with Trotskyists, or the same thing with Maoists. Trotsky played a good role and then he played a bad role. Stalin did the same and so did Mao Zedong. No one's perfect. And, that's, we're not doctrinaire on it, though some of our members feel differently. You know, there's different feelings about it in the club. But yeah, and by the way, I told the members in the Social Alternative, if you want to stay in Socialist Alternative, be a dual member in the party, you can do that. But then I said, that's okay with us, but I don't think it'll be okay with Socialist Alternative. They'll probably expel you, and he smiled at that.
Okay,
All right, thank
Bernard,
you.
thank you very much. Let's take one more question, and keep in mind that it's 8:35, and we're supposed to go until 9. And I think you have a couple more parts to your presentation. Or would you just like to continue now? It's up to you, Bernard.
Well, if there's one more question, I can do that.
Okay, so the next question is from Lowell. I'm going to unmute you. You have the floor.
Oh, aloha, Joe. Aloha, Bernard. This is Lowell. I wish you hadn't called on me because I have a hard time being brief. This is a fabulous presentation, Bernard. I want to know how to get those pamphlets, how I can purchase them in bulk if I need to. The ones that you showed up, like the one from Nelson Mandela, the one that the Young Communist League of your chapter produced. I think that would be something that a lot of chapters, a lot of clubs would benefit from. I'm coming from a kind of different position where I'm one man, one person, rather trying to, I like to say, restart the chapter, because there was a chapter here in Hawaii until 1958. It started in 37. I won't get into the history here, but I'm trying to restart it, and you know, facing a lot of obstacles, of course. One thing I'd like your advice on that I am trying to do at my workplace, and we do have a union, is forming a employee council primarily of union members. How would you suggest I do that? And how would you suggest I initially respond to the skepticism? Because people have a concept when you say communist, forget Communist Party, they have a concept. How do you respond to that when you put that word out to a stranger? Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bernard.
Yeah, the first thing is whatever you're trying to form, you have to put an outline of how you're going to do it and what are its goals. And you have to have a realistic view that it can succeed. We don't want to plan anything that fails, because people run away from failure, but they run to success. So we want to make sure whatever we do is winnable. So you definitely have to define what it is. As far as being a public communist, you know, that's a question that's it's a little bit more difficult. We're a party that is suppressed, and we're an enemy of the avowed enemy of the ruling class of this country and of the system. And so I think it's better not to be public at first. I think it's best to just be a good union member and to work hard. And then when they find out you're a communist later, they won't think as bad about it because they have such good thoughts of you. And that way you overcome the whole idea of the impression they have of what they've been taught about communists, which is totally false. So don't be a public communist at first. You know, just work with the people, do a good job, fight for unity always, fight against anyone that's divisive, anyone that's negative. Always be positive and think carefully before you say anything to anyone, build up personal friendships, and at a later date, you invite them over to your house or something, and they find out you're a party member, and then it'll be fine. They might even want to join, but that's the way I would do it. Thanks for the questions.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Please continue.
Okay, so where to recruit? The first place is, of course, the trade union movement. And if you're not in a union, you need to try to support their work. And you don't, again, like I was just saying, you don't want to be a public member in the beginning. You don't want to wear a shirt that says Communist Party. You don't want to wear a Communist Party pin or any of that type of stuff in the beginning. You want to be a good union member, and you want to be a good human being where people like you. You know, and again, it's very important, your attitude toward everything. And that goes a long way to overcoming stuff. You want to pick certain people who you work with in the union to develop a relationship. And you should be able to tell in just casual conversation about strikes, etc., who you can begin to approach. So in the teachers union, for instance, in the leadership, there's a woman who we were talking, and she doesn't. I don't know if she knows I'm a communist or not, but I told her I'm a very, very radical, and very far left, and she said I like radicals. And that's a woman that's very friendly. And I noticed when she was talking to the union vice president in meetings, he would always interrupt her. And I could see she was pissed. I made sure never to interrupt her. And I made a joke about it with her on the side, so she understood where I stood on this question, and that I actually saw it. A lot of people wouldn't have noticed it. So that's someone we're targeting to recruit into the Communist Party. The vice president, you see he's sort of backward. And we were talking about strikes, and he started bragging about everything they have accomplished without ever having to go on strike. So that is not someone I'm going to try to recruit, but it is someone I'm going to work with. So I'm going to have a different persona with that person than I am with Cynthia. So that's sort of what you need to do, I think, in the trade unions without going too far. And you want to really be careful about the communist stuff, because what happens is you red bait the union. And what happens is you turn the more reactionary forces in the union against the leadership that's trying to move forward. And so there's a time and place for how we work in the trade unions. Of course, it differs from place to place. Second thing is civil rights groups like Texas Organizing Project, the NAACP, Black Lives Matter, the National Organization of Women, organizations like this. And so it's very similar to the unions. You don't want, and here's the important thing. I noticed that when an ultra leftist shows up at a meeting the first time, they start preaching and start talking about whatever it is they know. Don't talk at the first meeting, or if you're asked something, just speak for a couple of seconds. But be there, be very attentive, make sure that they see you're looking at them, nod your head when they talk. People like that, and they'll start to notice you. And then after a few meetings, begin to talk and to give some ideas and support and things like that. And I think that's really, really important. Don't make them feel that you're coming in to take it over, you're coming from the outside. So listen and learn. Again, volunteer, be consistent, they'll appreciate it, and make them feel that they can always count on you. And again, personal relationships, go to lunch, go to dinner, see, do that type of thing. If you're a white male, you've got to be very, very sensitive to these groups that you're around. You can never interrupt someone. You can never lecture, and try to be humble. It really makes a big difference. And you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot, and you'll make more friends. The internet. Well, someone joins, first thing to do is contact them as quickly as possible and welcome them. And it's best to call them on the phone if you can. If you can't reach them by phone, send them something on the internet. And then try to set up an appointment where you can meet them in person for lunch or dinner or a coffee shop or something like that. And make sure you bring literature with you to that meeting and a party card. You want to find out, the first thing, are they already working in a union or some type of mass organization? What are their interests? Maybe they're writers, maybe they're good at designing buttons, who knows? But there's something that they're probably good at. You want to invite them, of course, to the very next party meeting or to the next party event, and you want to make sure they're put on the mailing list. Listen to really carefully to what they say, and let them get the lay of the land of what the party is, and especially before you get them to be involved in some type of task. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about club life itself, operating as a communist club. And again, our experience is going to be different from other areas. I understand that. So we're just going to talk about some of the things that sort of we learned. But one thing we do know is every club, you've got to have a Facebook in this day and age. You really do. Not just because you can recruit from it and bring people to meetings, but also because you can reach out, put out it's part of the ideological struggle, and it's part of the economic struggle, and it's part of the political struggle. It's part of all three of those areas. Each club, when you set up a Facebook, has to have the same name. So it's got to be Houston Communist Party, or the Communist Party of Houston, Communist Party of Austin. You don't use the county for one and the city for another, because no one knows. Just make it the city. And you want to make sure that's consistency. So in each district, if someone's trying to find a party organization, it's much easier. Then besides having a Facebook per city, you should have at least one Facebook per district. So let's say you have 10 people, one club in a district, you should have 2 Facebooks. You should have a statewide one, and it can have some of the same material that your city Facebook has, but it has to have a little bit of variety, and you have to invite people, you have to work on it to have people look at it. People will go back to your Facebook every day if you update every day. And I see a lot of Facebooks that aren't updated for a month. Well, I don't go back to those Facebooks because there's nothing new. You know, I want to get on something and see, 3 to 5 articles a day that I could use and share and whatever else, or be entertained with, or learn from. So you really need to put 1 to 5 updates every day on both Facebooks that you have. You don't want to skip any days as well, because people want consistency and they'll keep coming back. Now, you've got to really be careful on who gets administrative control. We've had problems in 2 different cities, in Dallas and Austin, where administrative control was given to new comrades who weren't totally trustworthy, turned out to be either nutcases or ultra leftists. They were posting horrible stuff that wasn't the party line or even close to it. And then they take over your site. So you need to have, it's best to have 2 administrators and start off with people that you know and that you can trust. And that's really important. Don't let anybody grab hold of your Facebook. Another thing is, you'll have fascists that come on. We have fascists that suddenly they'll put a comment beneath something. Well, look at the name, look at their page, and you can tell if they're a fascist or not. It's pretty obvious. They'll have the frogs and they'll have the anti-communist stuff and the Aryan Brotherhood stuff. You immediately block them. You don't get in a conversation with them. Don't allow them on the page. Block them automatically. And if another one gets on, block them. Don't let them take over your page. If you look at, not Telesar, but the page All Communists, they just had to get rid of 40 people off of their page because of infiltration by white supremacists. So you want to be careful about that always. You always want to answer the inquiries as quick as possible. And it may not be about joining, it may be other questions. And so you want to answer those, be very polite. Again, if it's a fascist, just block them. You don't feel that you have to answer anything they say. Then you can also promote your pages or promote the articles. Usually it's about $20. You can reach about 3,000 to 5,000 people in your area. You want to do that with the best articles. And they'll tell you, the Facebook will tell you what articles are getting the most hits. And that should also tell you what type of articles to put on the page. So you want to have content, but you want to make sure the form is good enough where a lot of people look at it, want to see the page. So you have one article that after a week gets 20, 30 people. You get another one that gets 100. Look at what that article was about, or the form of that article. Was it sort of a little bit more sensational? And try to put more articles like that. And that way you're going to increase your readership and your influence. You can still put in the more boring articles that have better content, just not as much. You want to have something that draws people in, something spectacular. You also want to use local events as much as possible. So you want to put in, if you're in Chicago, whatever just happened in Chicago, you want to put that in as much as possible too, so people can relate to it. And you want to put your own things in. If you're having a club meeting, or if you're at the demonstration, photograph it and put it on, and you'll see how many people like that. And it'll show that the party is not just reporting things, but is involved in the movement itself. So you want to be sure to take a camera with you, again, to every event you can. Sometimes I forget, but I'm trying to remember more and more. You also want to use, where do you draw your material? Well, when you turn on Facebook, of course, you'll get a lot of local stuff and a lot of stuff in general from the Huffington Post and everywhere else. But use the PW. We try to use the PW as much as possible. The Communist Party website as much as possible. Telesar, which is very, very good, is also good. I use RT Television sometimes, Huffington Post. Just printed an article by Jacobin on the history of the Communist Party doing unions forming African American unions and stuff. It was a pretty good article, so I put it on. But read it first and make sure that it represents our views more or less. Then you want to reach out and have your friends like the page, and that's really important. And don't think it just has to be local. We tried just local, but have it national. You're going to get people on your page, even if it's a city in the middle of Timbuktu. You're going to have people contact you from Russia, from Syria, from Palestine, from India. You'll build a whole international following, which is also good. Be careful who you friend. It's best to befriend people who are in the area, because you're going to use Facebook as an organizing tool for your club meetings, for your movie nights, for demonstrations. So you want to be able to hit that button and hit everyone and invite them. If they live in a different country, invite them anyway, it doesn't matter. But you want to make sure that you don't have people that are hostile, because you don't want them to necessarily come. And you want to also look at security as well on the Facebook. Now let's talk about the clubs themselves. The club should meet at least once a month, and the meeting should never be over an hour and a half. Now, sometimes they will go a little bit longer, but you should have a chair. You should have an agenda before each meeting. Your exec should come up with an agenda before, and at the meeting, ask anybody if they want to add anything to it or change something on the agenda. So that's very important, not to allow the meeting to go too long, and make sure the meeting is not dominated by one or two people. You really want the input of other people. I don't believe in closed meetings. Years ago, we used to have that. And groups, cadre organizations, ultra-left groups do that. Socialist Alternative meets once a week. Nobody's invited to those meetings except people who are already in. With us, we invite everybody that we can who's interested in coming to a Communist Party meeting. A Democratic politician shows up, or a union member, or a civil rights worker, or someone like that. And we say, this is your party. This isn't our party. This is your party. We're just already in it, involved in building it. But one day, you're going to be in it, and you're going to be helping to build it. And you have to have that attitude. We even, on some questions, allow people who aren't members of the party to vote on things that we're talking about doing. It gives them more feel of ownership. It's like if you're selling a Harley Davidson, you can't sell it unless you put them on the bike. And then when they're sitting on the bike, you start talking about how they're going to feel the wind in their hair, and how, when you leave work, it's so relaxing, and how it gives you complete freedom. They're already owning it. They're already imagining they own the bike. And we have to do the same thing in the party. It's a science. It's not just some mystical thing. There's a real science to selling, and it works for just about everything. You just have to adapt the science to what you're doing. So where do you have meetings? Some people, they have meetings in restaurants. I don't like that. I don't like restaurants because they're not private, number one. Other people can hear you. They're very noisy, and you're constantly interrupted by the waiters. So I don't think that's good. I think that it should be in someone's home. Of course, you have to be careful in security for that. Or it can be a union hall. A lot of union halls or libraries have back rooms that you can meet at. So I think those are good. When we went to Austin, we met in a library back room there, and they're usually free. Union halls can sometimes be free. It just depends on your connections. If you don't have them now, you'll get them later. But that's why we don't do it. That's why we don't do it at restaurants. And a lot of people think about doing that at the very beginning. There's another reason too. You don't do it at a restaurant. Is we have a lot of members in our club who are very poor. I mean, very poor. Some have no cars. They have to take buses to get to our house. Some are unemployed. Some are on Social Security. And a lot of them are fast food workers. When you ask people to go to a restaurant, they feel compelled and embarrassed to have to spend money sometimes. So that's another reason not to do it. You have to really be sensitive to other people. Let's see. Now, another question. Membership. How open you are. We tell people who are sensitive. They may be an immigrant, or they may have a very sensitive job politically or something like that. We tell them that, you don't have to be public. I would say maybe 20% or less of our members are not public members. And so, we recruit them, but we use a different name and it's kept secret. And then they sometimes come to the meetings. Sometimes you can't tell because, you know, we invite everyone to our meetings. Now, another thing we do at our meetings is we have report backs from the different committees, but we try to keep it short. We always have a short educational, usually 15 minutes, so it's not too long or boring. It's always good when you have a screen up and you can do a PowerPoint or do something other than just a lecture. And so we find that always interesting. Our next meeting, we have a member from FIEL. It's a civil rights organization that fights for immigrant rights. And the person speaking is not even a citizen. And so this is how we operate. And we have different interesting subjects and people come to see it. So you should always try to have a guest speaker come and the report backs on mass work. You should always talk at every meeting about recruiting. There should always be something on recruiting or training people to recruit. And we should always be asking the membership at the meetings what they think the club is doing right, what the club is doing wrong, and take, you know, positive criticisms, constructive criticisms, and try to apply them. And maybe say, well, can we invite you to the execs so we can talk to it in more detail? That type of thing. Now, we also have, yes?
It is now 8:56.
Uh-oh.
Time flies when you're having fun. Perhaps we can stop and take a few questions and then think about how to wrap up. What do you think?
Let's do that. I'll do a quick wrap up after the questions. Sounds good.
So again, if you have any questions about anything that Bernard has put on the table, or perhaps some things he hasn't put on the table, now is your time to click on your hand icon, and I will try to unmute you, and you can ask Bernard. Bernard is the answer man person. So please click on your okay, Benjamin, I'm going to unmute you, and Benjamin, you are unmuted. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Hi, Bernard. So I had a question about you were talking about where to recruit, and one of the places you talked about recruiting was in the trade union movement, recruiting within your union. So in a situation like mine, I don't have a union at my workplace, but I'm actually in the process of organizing the other workers at my workplace. What would you say about recruiting from within my workplace when my workplace is not yet organized? Do you think some recruiting might bring up, say, dirty words like commie to people who are not yet organized within a union, and would that possibly sabotage both unionization and recruitment? Do you have any advice on striking a balance there?
I do. I think if you want to recruit to the Communist Party, build the union first. Don't let people know you're a communist. After you're responsible for building the union and people find out you're a communist, then you'll be able to recruit because you've already helped them. And that's what communists do. I would also say that you might reach out. I don't know what your situation is, but you might reach out to some of the local unions. You know, it could be Unite Here, or it could be SEIU or whatever, and tell them what you're doing and see if they're willing to help.
Okay. Thanks, Bernard. The next person who has asked for the floor is Bob. I'm going to unmute you, Bob, and the floor is now yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. We've got 4 questions. I don't think we're going to get to them now, but maybe there can be a follow-up discussion or email about this. First of all, how much of your mass work do you do in your own name or the party's name? How do you afford the facilities what's your level of Marxist-Leninist education there, educational work that you're doing? And how do you handle people who sign up online who just don't belong in the party? So those are our 4 questions. I don't
Okay.
expect you to answer them quickly or now, but maybe there can be some follow-up. Thank you so much.
No problem. We do Marxist-Leninist education. We have the Socialist Reading Group, and so we do that there, and we also do it at the club meeting with 15-minute things. And there, it's usually not theory, but it's the application of theory to the mass movements the club is involved in. We also have a lending library, hundreds of books in English and Spanish, and people can check them out. And it's, you know, the works of Lenin, Marx, Engels, everybody, you know, Stalin, everyone, and Gus Hall, etc. And then we have a larger library with thousands and thousands of books going back to the 1870s. And it's the collected works of Lenin and Marx and Engels, old copies of the Communist International, stuff going back to the 1870s. So, and then we have the bookstore where we have hundreds of books. We have, you know, the works of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Kollontai, Rosa Luxemburg, all these people, of course, Gus Hall, Henry Winston, Claude Lightfoot, all of these. So we are a Marxist-Leninist club. Make no mistake about it. That's how we are. And everything we do is applying that particular theory to the political, the economic, and the ideological struggle. We do allow differences, and you have to recognize there always will be. There's always going to be a left wing, and there's always going to be a right wing. But the important thing is the Marxist-Leninist wing should be in the leadership. But we should tolerate everyone. That's my own opinion. Then on the other questions on people that join that shouldn't be in the party, well, we get rid of them, of course. We just had that problem in Austin with a member, and he was disruptive at the meetings, et cetera. It was a very sensitive case, and we hinted to him, and he finally quit on his own, so we didn't have to kick him out. But yeah, people that are disruptive or really don't belong in the party, you know, we get rid of. But we have a very wide range of people. We have 2 African-American pastors in the party here, in the club. And they do incredible work with the trade union movement. One just got back from Mexico on the border, on the NAFTA plants and stuff, doing work. And, you know, so, and our political work is done as a Marxist-Leninist. You know, we try as much as possible to hew a independent line in the Democratic Party that's pro-working class without, you know, disrupting unity and stuff in the struggle against Trump and the Wall Street, et cetera. So I can't remember the 2 questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. One more question, and then maybe you can think about how to wrap up. Email has a question. Email, I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, hey, Bernard, wonderful, hi there. Wonderful presentation. I have actually a very quick question and a slightly more complicated one. Quick, is this being recorded? Because I would like to be able to have people in my district who were not able to be on get the benefit of this. The second question is this, the issue of youth. You have a YCL chapter, not a chapter, but you have your own YCL in Texas, right? And in my district, which is Virginia, as you know, a very large number of people who are joining, who are almost always joining online, are really, really young. I mean, they're like 18, 19 years old. And we think that we should have a special approach to youth. And I'm wondering what we think about how one might start doing that, especially if the people who have to take the initiative are older like me. I'm not going to tell you how old. Thank you.
I just had my 68th birthday. Okay, well, so let me say this. It's a very good question. If you have a strong party club, then you can build a YCL. If you don't have a strong club, do not build a YCL. Recruit these people directly in the party and educate them and involve them in activities. Because the YCL is a wing of the, it's a separate organization, but it is part of the party. It's under party control. And the leaders of the YCL should be, most of them, or the majority of the leadership, should be members of the Communist Party. It's not a separate autonomous organization, and it never has been in any communist organizations. But the YCL, a lot of young people have sort of ultra-left views and stuff, and because they don't have experience in building things. And so they're also infiltrated by ultra-left organizations, anarchist groups, etc. They can really tear everyone apart. So if you have a strong club, build a YCL. But not everyone young has to be in the YCL. That's a secondary question. If you have a weak club, then I would wait to build a YCL till you had a big, strong club.
Okay, Bernard. 9:04. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm going to end with this. There's three areas of struggle under Marxism: the economic, the ideological, and the political. In the economic, the club should be involved in the union movement, in the workers' movement where there are no unions. That is the struggle to redistribute the wealth. And that also includes organizations like the Poor People's Campaign, which I recommend everyone to be in, and organizations like here in Texas, Texas Organizing Project. You probably have other groups like that, Black Lives Matter, etc. The second area of struggle is the ideological, and that's educating, that's reading, that's not just learning what the party line is, but why the party line is that and how to adopt it to the actual work that you're doing. It's understanding, it's an education and an understanding of Marxist-Leninism and the special vanguard role that the party plays. We're not part of the left, just part of the left. We're not a tail of the Democratic Party. We are a very special party. We're part of an international organization of workers and communist parties. And we are the only people in the world that have ever overthrown capitalism. The day a socialist does it or an anarchist does it, let me know. It'll be a day when it's snowing in hell. So if you want to overthrow capitalism, if you really do, then this is the party. We may not be strong enough right now, but that's why we need to build it. Because until this party is built and becomes a strong major party, capitalism will continue to do what it's doing. Nobody else is going to lead that struggle to overthrow capitalism. Bernie Sanders isn't, DSA isn't, Socialist Alternative isn't. We're the ones that have to do it. That's our historic duty when we were formed in 1919. The last part is the political struggle itself, and I can't tell you how important that is. There's a lot of anarchism, I think, within the Communist Party, of people that aren't involved in the political campaigns. And we need to have people, we need to run our own candidates again, begin to run them like we're doing here in Texas, and we need to support progressive candidates who may not necessarily belong to our party. Maybe they're in DSA or just progressive Democrats, but we need to work in those campaigns and learn the science of elections, of how to run elections, of how to raise money, of how to be a campaign manager, of how to set up phone banks, because those are the skills that we need to be professional revolutionaries. We need to learn how to do lobbying, and you can do that with unions and civil rights groups when you go to the state legislatures. Without that, we're not going to stop the wars. We're not going to stop imperialism. We're not going to save the environment, any of that. We're not going to protect our democratic rights, which are under control like never before, under attack. And so if we do all of that, one day I think we'll have a new world that we will help build and play a role in. Thank you.
Okay. Bernard, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Bernard. I think it was very great and thought-provoking and a presentation full of meat and experience. Recall that our party building campaign will extend until Labor Day, and you will be able to access this webinar in a couple of days For folks who weren't able to see it, you will get an email giving you access to it, and we will also post it on the party's website. So we'd like to encourage you to share it, get the word out, and so on and so forth. You should also know that there is a fund drive that is a part of this campaign for the PW. We're encouraging people to give a sustainer, whatever you're able to give, $5, $10, $20, $50 a month. We like you to go to the PW website, to the donation link, and please make a contribution. We're also going to be holding 2 summer schools as part of the building drive. One's going to be in Los Angeles next weekend, and the other's going to be in Chicago in August. So here again, you can go to the party's website at www.cpusa.org and check out the classes. Hopefully, if you're interested in going, please write to membership@cpusa.org. Let us know, and hopefully you might be able to participate. Bernard, once again, thanks a lot for your presentation. There'll be more like it during the course of the drive. And with that, let's say good night to everyone, and we'll see you on the front lines, in the picket lines, in the voter registration tables, in the occupations, in the get out the vote efforts during the fall. We try to break the Republican gridlock on the House and on the Senate, via the House and the Senate, on the judiciary, and hopefully on the presidency itself. So thanks, everybody. Good night, and we'll be talking. Bye-bye. Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you.